Hi everyone, if it's your first time here, I'm Sam, the Stoic teacher. I'm a philosophy and theology graduate from the University of Cambridge, and I now have the pleasure of teaching philosophy and religious studies in London. Now today we're celebrating the fact that we have reached 2,500 subscribers, and when I checked this morning that number had gone up again. Thank you so much for your support and for your time. I've actually been doing my good friend Ali Abdal's part-time YouTuber Academy over the last 6 weeks, and this is my last homework, which is an unscripted video, so hopefully I don't talk lots of nonsense. So let's get going. On my Instagram page, which you should go and follow, linked below, I asked for questions about Stoicism, about my weight loss journey, and about anything else. And so the questions that have come in are grouped roughly into 3 categories. 1, how can Stoicism help us? 2, Stoicism and emotion, surprisingly. And 3, weight loss and personal stuff. So how did I lose over 140 pounds of weight since 2017? So let's get going. How can Stoicism be useful against procrastination? How to avoid and overcome those flinches when we're starting the work that's required at the time, and what would Seneca say about procrastination? For example, I'll start my diet or leg day tomorrow. In On the Shortness of Life, he tells us it's not that we have a short time to live, it's that we waste a lot of it. Stoics remind us of the phrase memento mori, remember that you will die. Stoics advise us that we regularly reflect on the fact that we don't have forever, and therefore we should make good use of the time that we have on earth. Marcus Aurelius, in the Meditations, he kind of tells himself off. He says, is this what you were born for? To stay under the covers, to stay under your blanket, to sleep more, get up and do, he says, the work of a Roman. It's important to remember that Stoicism comes as part of a package of a philosophy of life. It's not just about, oh, how can I get my essay done, though it does help with that, but it's underpinned by this idea of how can I live well? Can you be a Stoic and a nihilist? It depends on your definition of nihilism, and there's some debate about this. But in essence, if you're working of the definition of nihilism as things having no value, Stoicism couldn't really be further from that. In fact, for Stoics, if you were to ask them, what is the most valuable thing, or what is a definition of good, they would basically say virtue, courage, justice, moderation, and wisdom. And a nihilist would probably say, well, what's the point of any of those? And the answer from a Stoic point of view is, well, those are the things that are good. Can you be a Stoic and a nihilist? Not based on that definition. This one made me laugh. How to achieve more materialistic success in life using Stoic principles. The idea of approaching Stoicism just to achieve materialistic success isn't in line with Stoic virtues. Stoic virtues are to drive towards courage, justice, wisdom, and moderation. And yes, many people point out that Seneca was an incredibly wealthy man, incredibly wealthy, and so they say, so Stoics, they talk about how wealth is bad, but then at the same time they accumulate so much of it. And the Stoic argument would be that you don't have to remove yourself completely from the world. It's okay to have wealth as long as you would be okay with losing it tomorrow. Because for a Stoic, if your happiness is tied to material success, then you are not happy and you can't live well. We need to be aware of what is in our control and what isn't, and material success or wealth is not something that's within our control. The only thing that's truly within our control is behaving in line with the 4 Stoic virtues of courage, justice, wisdom, and moderation. You can see a theme coming through these answers. What the hell is it? Thank you for that question. Stoicism is an ancient philosophy going back thousands of years. The surviving works are those of the Roman Stoics about 2,000 years ago, but it goes back even further to ancient Greece. And in Stoicism offers us a way to live well, influence cognitive behavioral therapy, which is one of the foremost ways that we treat depression and anxiety in the modern age. The essential truth at the core of Stoicism is something called the dichotomy of control, the idea that there are some things within our control and others that are not, and we should spend our time focusing on the things within our control. Stoicism and emotion. Where does passion stand in it all, considering Stoicism is so much about rational thinking? You are right to say that rationalism plays a big part in Stoicism. In fact, Stoics believe that Zeus gifted humans with the gift of rationality. It is our divine gift that allows us to differentiate what's in our control and what's not, and therefore that is what allows us to be happy. The way we use the term passion is often to refer to the idea of emotion. This is not to be confused with the way the Stoics write about passions, which refers specifically to kind of negative emotions. Assuming this person is talking about passion in the way that we use it in modern society, the idea of emotions, Stoicism absolutely encourages us to have emotions. Just because you think rationally doesn't mean that you shouldn't have emotions, and in fact Stoics accept that whilst the ideal Stoic sage, which is a fictional character, would be able to think rationally all the time, as humans that's something we simply can't do. And Epictetus himself compares himself to a sick person in a hospital bed, and just simply advising other sick people in hospital beds next to them. We can never get it 100%. We're not robots, we're human beings. And so, Cato, a Stoic hero, is reported to have cried and wailed inconsolably every time he heard of his soldiers dying in battle. That doesn't sound very robotic or emotionless. And it's important to keep that in mind, because a lot of people mistake this definition of small s Stoicism as repressing emotions with big S Stoicism, which is the philosophy of Stoicism, which this channel is based on. How can you apply this to romantic relationships where vulnerability is needed? So this is referring to how can you apply Stoicism to romantic relationships. This is something that I had to think about myself when entering into my relationship. And actually, Stoicism has improved my relationship, and many people report that Stoicism allows them to improve their personal relationships, and here's the reason. Stoicism does not mean invulnerability. In fact, vulnerability is encouraged. Seneca tells us once we decide that someone is our friend, we should treat them the way we would treat ourselves. We should tell them the things that we would only tell ourselves. So openness and vulnerability is actively encouraged in Stoicism. It's simply about picking those people wisely. So in terms of applying those to romantic relationships, applying Seneca's advice, what we would say is choose your partner wisely, but once you do choose them, don't hold back, be vulnerable, and do trust them. So other people also think that Stoicism is kind of negative about romantic relationships because they hear things like Epictetus' advice. He says when you're kissing your daughter or your wife, say to yourself, this is immortal, i.e. remember that this person is going to die. Some people say that's weird, why would you do that? Well, think about it. Person A doesn't remember the fact that his wife and daughter are going to die. He's probably much more likely to get moody about the fact they left the milk out last night and he can't have his cereal in the morning. Whereas the person who's constantly reminding themselves that the time we have with our loved ones is numbered and that they are mortal and they will die one day, will be much less likely to be annoyed about stupid little things. And so, in fact, what Stoicism encourages is for us to foster gratitude for our loved ones and to treat them well and to make ourselves good partners, good people for them. I feel like we should talk about handling despair, actually, how to handle disappointment honorably. How can we handle disappointment, handle rejection, for example? Stoicism has a lot of answers for this. And one of those is to always remember what is within our control and what isn't. And therefore, William Irvine, in his wonderful book, A Guide to the Good Life, The Ancient Art of Stoic Joy, tells us that we should have internal goals rather than external goals. So rather than saying, I want to get this job, or I want to win this tennis match, the internal goal would be, I want to prepare the best I can for this job interview, or I want to get all my tennis training in to the best of my ability so that I can perform. And then, that way, if we're focusing on internal goals, whatever happens, we know that we focused on what is within our control, and that way, disappointment isn't necessarily a reflection on us, because we acknowledge that those outcomes are outside of our control. They're not something that we can directly control. We can have influence over it through what we do in order to achieve our internal goals, but we cannot control all the outcomes. And I think realization of that and the dichotomy of control is something that can help us to handle disappointment. Weight loss questions. So those of you who have been watching me for a while will know that since 2017 I've lost 140 pounds of weight. That weight loss transformation came about as a result of discovering the philosophy of Stoicism, and that is why, in fact, I set up this channel, so that hopefully I can help others that are perhaps in the same situation, whether it be with weight loss or other personal issues that they may be having. How did I stay consistent? Stoic habit equation that I have come up with was essentially the way that I was able to stay consistent. 4H plus VD equals the SHE. 4H is the James Clear's 4 laws of habit formation from Atomic Habits, plus VD, which is voluntary discomfort, a Stoic concept, equals the Stoic habit equation. Essentially, voluntary discomfort tells us that in order for us to be grateful for the things we have, and in order to progress, we need to welcome discomfort, because otherwise we become too complacent and we become too soft. So Stoics sometimes will practice voluntary discomfort, for example, by sleeping on a hard bed once a week or having cold showers, because, for example, if we were to lose our comfortable bed one day, we would be okay because we are used to lying on a hard surface, or if we were to lose hot water for one day, we'd be okay with having a cold shower. I was able to apply this to my weight loss by reminding myself of voluntary discomfort every time I was waking up when it was still dark at 5 a.m. to go to the gym, or every time I would have a meal that perhaps wasn't as pleasant as one that I would otherwise want. And it really, really did help me in those initial stages, because when I was morbid, now, over time, I realised that actually, for my relationship with food, it's better to sometimes allow those treats. But back then, when I was morbidly obese, what I really, really needed in order to kind of save my life was a really rigid approach, and Stoicism and voluntary discomfort helped me to consistently hit my goals. How much did your diet change? I've gone through every single fad diet you could think of. I was keto for a very, very long time, meaning no carbs whatsoever. I was also kind of just low carb and high protein for a long period of time, and I did intermittent fasting. I've done various protocols of eating in an 8-hour window, eating in a 4-hour window, and at one point eating just one meal a day as well. So my diet changed significantly throughout the period where I was losing weight. If you went to the gym, how often and did you mainly do cardio or weights? I did a mixture of cardio and weights, so I did a basic strength training program, and I combined that with doing a 5K run every other day with 2 rest days on the weekend. The specific strength program that I've been doing has changed slightly, and whichever cardio I wanted to do has changed slightly. So from 5K runs, I discovered jump rope through Rush Athletics, jump rope dudes, and as a result of those guys, I learned some nice ninja tricks, which I'll put on the screen now. Jump rope's been a really, really good thing for my fitness and my consistency and just my overall mental well-being. Couldn't recommend it enough. But generally, the idea of kind of 3 to 4 weight training sessions and kind of 2 or more days of cardio in between has been my philosophy throughout all this time over the last kind of 4 years, where I've been able to lose weight and keep it off. What was the key factor in you losing weight? The philosophy of Stoicism, you might have guessed, was the main thing that allowed me to lose weight and keep it off. Because Layne Norton in Fat Loss Forever writes that only 5% of people that actually lose a significant portion of body weight end up keeping it off after 3 years. And it's been 4 years now since I lost weight, and I've managed to keep it off. And I think that the philosophy of Stoicism provided a philosophy of life, an underarching philosophy beyond this idea of kind of a fad diet or just like aesthetic appearance, that provided a reason for me to want to live in a courageous way and to eat with moderation, do the right thing for myself. Eating habits, I've got myself to a point now where I'm able to eat things in moderation. As I mentioned, that's one of the Stoic virtues. And if you do want me to make a video in detail on my nutritional protocol now, I'd be very happy to do that. But in essence, I have periods where I eat at caloric maintenance and periods where I eat in a deficit in order to reach kind of certain fat loss goals. And this is something called the JAB deficit, which I followed from Jordan Syatt, the idea of sustainable long-term fat loss that doesn't label certain foods bad or certain foods good. It simply acknowledges that there is a number of ways to get into a caloric deficit, and it doesn't always have to be a rush. It can be done sustainably over time, and I do find that approach to be really, really enjoyable. It's allowed me to break free of kind of disordered eating and binge eating, and actually I'm really, really happy for the first time in my life, I think, with my relationship with food. Thank you so much for sending all your questions in. Thank you so much for your support. When I set this up just before the pandemic hit us, I wouldn't have ever imagined that the channel would have had the growth that it has, and that the Skillshare course would have helped so many people. It's an absolute dream to be helping people through my personal experiences and through kind of the knowledge that I've been able to accumulate whilst trying to improve myself, and I hope that I can continue to do that. If you'd like to learn more in depth about Stoicism, you can click on mine and my good friend Ali Abdal's Skillshare class below for free access. And if you want to learn more about Stoic techniques or see more on the Stoic weight loss journey, you can click on the video above on the Stoic techniques, and also on the playlist to the left, which documents my Stoic weight loss journey. I'll see you next time for some more ancient wisdom from modern times.